X-Men movies were made. It was actually about something. In all respects, Superman isn't about anything. It's a fantasy. Spider-Man's a bit the same. X-Men is about the mutants, which upsets the rest of the population because they don't have it. The people who read the comics, they all relate to what it is to be a mutant.
So after much deliberation, I've settled on Milo Gibson. Having watched a couple of his movies just to get to know the guy, he does have the essence of Wolverine. He has the mysterious element to him. He comes across as a guy who is closed off and takes matters into his own hands. And he's at a good age as well to really commit to a franchise, but not to the point where Hugh Jackman was basically leading it.
When it was announced that he was going to play the young Charles Xavier, he was on a red carpet somewhere and he said, "So tell me, how does it feel to be going into the shoes, albeit the younger shoes, of Patrick Stewart?" And James said, "I'll bury him." Good man, yes, I vote for that.
Plus his dad, Mel Gibson, was one of the original picks for Wolverine. I would like other mutants to be introduced, but at a younger age so we can set them up for sequels. So I've gone with Mia Check as Jubilee. I think Julia Butters would be a good Kitty Pryde. And for Iceman, I would like Joseph Zada. And also, if we can throw in Emma Frost in there, I'd like Michelle Randolph to play her. What do you guys think of these fan castings? Who would you like to play the X-Men?
The update now is that Disney has pushed too far, and the entire X-Men cast isn't just hesitating, they're done. After years of carrying this franchise through the highs of First Class and the turbulence of Dark Phoenix, the same actors who helped Marvel survive its weakest years are walking away, and it all comes down to money. Not negotiation breakdowns, but Disney deliberately offering contracts lower than what these stars earned a decade ago. This is the same strategy we've seen with other projects. Strip out the veterans, recast with cheaper, more controllable talent, and sell it as a multiverse reshuffle. It's the exact playbook Disney used on Snow White, on the Acolyte last June, and most recently on Ironheart. Cut budgets, cut corners, hope the brand name alone will keep audiences invested. But with X-Men, the gamble has backfired. James McAvoy, once the enthusiastic face of Xavier, now flatly dismisses any questions about returning. Michael Fassbender, who gave Magneto one of the richest arcs in comic book history, has been offered less than his Apocalypse salary. Sophie Turner, who poured herself into Jean Grey, turned down a cameo pitched at fraction pay. Even Nicholas Hoult, the heart behind Beast, ghosted their calls. And Jennifer Lawrence? She had already made clear during the Dark Phoenix press tour that the respect was gone. It's not just a story of one franchise, it's a bigger story about Disney's handling of Marvel. The same studio that hands out $300 million budgets for new projects has decided the actors who carried X-Men into this generation are disposable. But here's the twist. Fans have noticed, and the backlash is already bigger than anyone at Disney expected. What makes this situation different from the usual Hollywood contract fights is that these weren't simple disagreements at the negotiation table.
As we all know, the mutant saga will be the next phase of the MCU, and they've already started hunting down actors who will fill up the X-Men, so I'm going to get my quick fan cast out the way before they start revealing the actors. Now, for the ideal lineup of the MCU X-Men, I've gone for Cyclops, Jean, Storm, obviously.
According to multiple insiders, Disney went in with a strategy. They weren't trying to compromise, they were trying to undercut. Reports say the offers weren't just lower than the actors expected, they were lower than what some earned nearly a decade ago on X-Men, Apocalypse. That's not a negotiation, that's a message. And the message was clear. Disney no longer sees these actors as essential. The plan was to bring them back for nostalgia cameos at a fraction of their worth, then quietly shuffle in a younger, cheaper lineup under the multiverse banner. It's the same maneuver they've used elsewhere. Cut legacy talent, frame it as creative rebuilding, and hope fans go along with it. We saw it with Ironheart, we saw it with The Acolyte, and we saw it with the Snow White remake. The cost-cutting has become a pattern. But with X-Men, the calculation backfired. Because unlike Snow White or even Fantastic Four, this cast has a decade of proven fan loyalty. James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender aren't placeholders. They redefined Professor X and Magneto for an entire generation. Sophie Turner turned Jean Grey into a modern, tragic figure. Nicholas Hoult gave Beast both humanity and heartbreak. These weren't interchangeable roles, these were anchors of the franchise. So when the calls came in with offers that one source described as glorified extra pay, the actors didn't just hesitate, they walked. And in doing so, they exposed Disney's strategy for what it really is, not reinvention, but erasure. This wasn't about moving the story forward. It was about replacing decades of commitment with cheaper contracts. The breaking point has been reached. And what's happening here isn't isolated to the mutants, it's part of a much larger pattern across Marvel. James McAvoy was once the poster child of Marvel's reboot era. Back in 2011, he signed on to First Class with barely 60 pages of script in hand. The pay was solid, the role was close to home, and he described the opportunity as irresistible. He was excited, even grateful, to step into Professor X's shoes. Fast forward to now, and the contrast is startling.
But also Gambit, Rogue, Bishop, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and of course Wolverine. So for Cyclops, Harris Dickinson is already a favourite, and I can definitely see him in that role, more so than I can see him as James Bond. He just has that star quality that lends itself to a franchise, and he's shown to have incredible range. Hopefully this is finally the time where Scott gets the cinematic treatment he deserves, rather than being sidelined in favour of other characters.
In recent press, McAvoy has been blunt, almost dismissive, saying flatly, they can publicize their own film. For a studio that built its empire on carefully staged enthusiasm, that kind of candor cuts deep. Michael Fassbender's shift has been just as telling. Known for his restraint and professionalism, Fassbender rarely let frustration slip through interviews. But while promoting Dark Phoenix, he admitted he had checked out a little bit from Magneto's arc. Listen closely, and you realize he wasn't just talking about a character, he was talking about himself. This was a performer drained by constant rewrites, studio micromanagement, and now, Disney dangling contracts worth less than what he earned nearly 10 years ago. The irony is that Fassbender's Magneto was arguably one of Marvel's most layered villains, a revolutionary fueled by grief, commanding both sympathy and fear. He delivered performances that stood shoulder to shoulder with any MCU antagonist, even elevating otherwise weak scripts. And yet Disney's offer treated him like a background prop, expecting the same weight, the same emotional depth, for half the pay. Together, McAvoy and Fassbender embodied the heart of the modern X-Men, the ideological clash of Xavier and Magneto. For Disney to undervalue them so openly wasn't just a miscalculation, it was a statement. It told fans and actors alike that legacy doesn't matter, only budgets do. And when the faces of your franchise start making jokes about doing their own PR or lacking the energy to keep going, you know the trust has collapsed. And this wasn't limited to the leaders of the team. Other cast members, just as committed, faced the same dismissive treatment. Sophie Turner was one of the youngest faces in the X-Men franchise, but she treated Jean Grey like a legacy role. She said in interviews that Jean was the first comic she ever read, and she dove into heavy research, studying mental health conditions like schizophrenia and dissociative identity disorder, just to capture the depth of the Phoenix storyline. That kind of preparation is rare, even for prestige dramas. Yet Disney's offer? A 40-second cameo at fraction pay. For an actress who once carried an entire arc on her shoulders,
there are a lot of popular fan casts out there for Jean Grey, but my one might surprise you. I've always loved Olivia Cooke as an actress. I think she's incredible in House of the Dragon as well as many other roles, and I think she could really be an awesome Jean Grey.
The proposal felt less like a tribute and more like a humiliation. Nicholas Holt's experience was no better. His beast required hours of grueling prosthetic work every day, leaving him literally overheating inside chemically treated suits. He admitted he'd sweat so much it was through his ears. Yet despite years of endurance, the studio offered him what one insider called a glorified extras rate for a possible return. This was the actor who gave Beast both vulnerability and charm, balancing brains and heart in a character that could have easily slipped into caricature. Instead of honoring that, Disney treated him like background filler. Then there's Jennifer Lawrence. As Mystique, she was once positioned as the face of the reboot, fiery, defiant, and integral to the storyline. But by the time Dark Phoenix came around, the cracks were obvious. Her death scene was revealed on Jimmy Kimmel before the film even hit theaters, with Lawrence herself joking about Sophie Turner crying because her vape was taken away. It wasn't just gallows humor, it was an indictment of how little weight the studio gave to Mystique's exit. What should have been a powerful send-off was reduced to an awkward shrug. Together, Turner, Holt, and Lawrence show the same pattern McAvoy and Fassbender faced. Deep personal investment, years of sacrifice, and in return, offers that undercut their legacy. These weren't minor roles. They were vital threads in the franchise's emotional core, and yet Disney treated them as expendable. But if even the new generation of stars felt discarded, what chance did the true veterans have? Patrick Stewart's connection to the X-Men is unmatched. For nearly 2 decades, he embodied Professor X with a mix of authority and compassion that defined the franchise. When Logan released in 2017, Stewart admitted something remarkable, that watching the finished cut moved him to tears, and in that moment, he knew it was his farewell. He called it a spontaneous and unexpected decision, but the subtext was clear. The story had reached its natural end. Yet even then, insiders suggested that with the right offer and a respectful send-off, Stewart might have returned.
For Storm, I've gone with Jamie Lawson, who you'll recognise from Sinners and The Woman King. I just really want Austin Butler as Gambit because this guy is a master with accents, plus he's one of the best and most charismatic actors we've got today. Rogue was a bit of a hard choice because Margaret Qualley was my pick and I was really excited when they announced her as a potential candidate.
Disney never made that offer. Instead, they folded Xavier into the multiverse shuffle, reducing a legendary character to a cameo in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. For fans, it was nostalgic, but for Stewart, it was a sign that Disney had lost sight of what made the role meaningful in the first place. Then comes Hugh Jackman. No other actor is more synonymous with X-Men than him. For 17 years, from X-Men 2000 to Logan, he was Wolverine. His return in Deadpool and Wolverine should have been a victory lap, and in some ways, it is. He looks incredible, in arguably the best shape of his career. But here's the trap Disney walked into. Jackman is too good. Fans seeing him back in full form will inevitably ask, why replace him at all? Disney wants to reboot Wolverine with a younger, cheaper face, but once audiences see Jackman deliver again, that transition becomes nearly impossible. This is the paradox. With Stewart, Disney undervalued a legend who might have returned for the right reasons. With Jackman, they overplayed nostalgia, putting him in a spotlight so bright it undermines their entire recast strategy. One veteran left because his story was complete, another returned so spectacularly that fans may never accept a replacement. Either way, Disney loses control of the narrative. And if even the icons of the franchise expose these contradictions, the fallout for everyone else was inevitable. Few stories captured Disney's mishandling of Marvel talent more painfully than Channing Tatum's long fight to bring Gambit to the big screen. For almost 20 years, Tatum lobbied, trained, and prepared to play the card-flinging Cajun. Fox had already greenlit the project before the Disney acquisition. A director was locked, sets were being designed, and Tatum was fully committed. Then, with one boardroom decision, the entire production was shelved. Kevin Feige reportedly told him directly, "I love Gambit, I just don't know how to do it right now." For Tatum, who had poured nearly 2 decades into making the role a reality, that wasn't just a delay, it was a burial. He once admitted that when the project was canceled, he couldn't even watch Marvel movies anymore. That's how deep the disappointment ran, and the insult didn't stop there. When Deadpool and Wolverine became Marvel's big nostalgia project, Ryan Reynolds, not the studio, fought to get Tatum included. After years of development, training, and passion.
But she has dropped a pretty disappointing hint that she's not going to commit to a franchise because she finds it scary. So I've gone with Emma Mackey. I think she really does suit the character and she's a bit of a chameleon. Would like to see Bill Skarsgård as Nightcrawler, Aldous Hodge as Bishop, Victor Drago himself as...
Disney's grand offer wasn't a starring role or even a major arc. It was a cameo. A brief appearance capped with the bitter joke Tatum himself told interviewers, "I've only been guaranteed a chair to watch the movie in." It's a brutal example of how Disney has treated loyal actors. They took Gambit, a fan-favorite character with one of Marvel's most unique personalities, and reduced him to a footnote. And worse, they sidelined the very actor who had kept that dream alive through 2 decades of false starts. For fans, Gambit's absence has been one of the biggest what-ifs of the X-Men saga. For Tatum, it became a symbol of corporate interference destroying passion projects. And for Disney, it's another case study in how mismanagement has turned potential wins into embarrassing losses. But the X-Men weren't the only ones facing this problem. The cracks had already started to spread into the Avengers themselves. Section 6, Jeremy Renner and the Avengers pay controversy. What happened with the X-Men cast isn't an isolated case. The same pattern has bled into Marvel's original Avengers lineup, and no story captures it more clearly than Jeremy Renner's. After surviving a near-fatal snowplow accident in early 2023, Renner endured months of surgeries and rehabilitation, publicly crediting his survival to an army of people who helped him recover. By 2025, he had returned to promoting projects and was ready to step back into Hawkeye, a role he had carried since his cameo in 2011's Thor. Then came Disney's offer for Season 2 of his Disney Plus series Hawkeye. Instead of matching his previous rate, the studio offered half the salary he made in Season 1. Renner himself revealed it on a podcast, saying, "Why did you think I'm only half Jeremy because I got ran over?" It wasn't about a raise. He was asking to be paid the same as before. Instead, Disney expected him to commit 8 months of work for half the money, all while still recovering from catastrophic injuries. Fans immediately rallied to his side, flooding social media with outrage. For many, Renner's case became symbolic of how Disney treats longtime stars, squeezing costs wherever possible, even if it means insulting the very actors who built the MCU.
Colossus. For Professor X, I want Ralph Fiennes in there, although I am open to other castings as well. And for Beast, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but I think Nick Offerman would be perfect, honestly. Alright, so Wolverine is almost impossible because, let's face it, Hugh Jackman is at this point irreplaceable. Many would like Taron Egerton in the role, but even though Taron Egerton is an awesome actor, there's just nothing about him that really screams Wolverine.
And Renner isn't alone. Scarlett Johansson famously sued Disney in 2021 over Black Widow's hybrid streaming release, arguing she lost tens of millions when box office bonuses were undercut. Chris Hemsworth has openly criticized Thor, Love and Thunder as making his character into a parody. Anthony Mackie faced a wave of backlash after comments during the Captain America Brave New World press tour were twisted into controversy. Taken together, these incidents reveal the same fault line we've seen with the X-Men. Disney prioritizing short-term financial strategy over long-term respect for the actors. It's not just about one salary dispute. It's a cultural shift that has left Marvel's veterans disillusioned and its audience increasingly skeptical. And at the center of this storm is one name that keeps surfacing: Bob Iger. Bob Iger was once hailed as Disney's savior, the architect of Marvel's golden era. But his second tenure has looked very different. His comments during the Hollywood strikes, calling writers' and actors' demands unrealistic, turned public opinion against him. Financial decisions like ballooning Disney plus debt, mass layoffs, and relentless park price hikes have only deepened the backlash. Under Iger, projects like Snow White collapsed into controversy. The Acolyte was labeled a failure, and Marvel itself has stumbled through costly reshoots and disappointing test screenings. Internally, the board still backs him, but among fans and talent, trust has eroded. The salary disputes with both Avengers and X-Men cast members are no longer isolated problems. They're symptoms of a leadership style seen as corporate first, people second. And now, with Deadpool and Wolverine carrying the weight of fan expectations, Iger's reputation is tethered to whether this film can salvage Marvel's fading momentum. This is where Disney's gamble becomes most dangerous. Deadpool and Wolverine isn't being marketed like a normal Marvel release. It's being loaded like a rescue mission. Nostalgic cameos, long-awaited character returns, even Hugh Jackman stepping back into the role he retired from. All of it designed to cover the cracks spreading across the Marvel brand. But once the credits roll, the question becomes, what's next? The old cast has walked away. The new X-Men lineup hasn't inspired excitement. The Fantastic Four reboot is already facing skepticism, with even casual fans admitting they barely recognize the cast. And audiences are noticing the pattern. When Disney relies on legacy stars, the movies shine. When they pivot to budget replacements, the results fall flat. If Deadpool and Wolverine succeeds, it proves that respect for legacy still drives Marvel. But if it feels like a patchwork of cameos instead of a vision, it could deepen the backlash and make the upcoming slate even harder to sell. Because fans don't just love the characters, they love the actors who gave them life. And that's the part Disney seems to have forgotten. You can't replace loyalty with lower budgets. You can't swap out depth for quick contracts. The audience sees it, the actors feel it, and the backlash is growing louder. The X-Men cast saying no isn't just a contract dispute. It's a warning that Marvel's future isn't guaranteed by logos or special effects, but by trust. So the real question now is simple. After Deadpool and Wolverine, does Disney have a plan to rebuild that trust? Or is this the moment when the cracks in Marvel's empire finally become impossible to ignore?